Hey everybody, this is Strict9 with Strict9 GP, and welcome to another episode of my Out of the Park Baseball 19 playthrough with the Phillies. This should be episode 10, and we are finished with the off season, just about to start spring training. I've got my lineups and starting rotation set, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I'm on this screen, the playoff history screen, because I realized after last episode I forgot to even go through who the winners were in the playoffs, and I thought I would start off this episode by doing that. And it's really no surprise how it turned out, but I say it's no surprise, but I guess the surprise to me is how dominant these two teams, Tampa Bay and Milwaukee, have been in this playthrough. Miami, who shut me out in that wild card game, they went on to sweep Washington, so they were a strong team, had a good year. But then Milwaukee took care of them in the league championship series, and then they took care of Tampa Bay in the World Series that went the distance, won all 7 games. And once again, it was these two teams in it. And if you look at the history now, I started this playthrough in 2017, and these two teams definitely, that was Milwaukee's third appearance in the World Series. That was their third win since I've started this playthrough. And for Tampa Bay, they had a run of 5 straight World Series appearances. This is the 7th time they've been in the World Series in this playthrough. So no doubt those two teams have a lot of depth, a lot of good stars. I think Tampa Bay, I think I've said it before, but Tampa Bay I think has been winning with mainly pitching, although they have had Justin Bellinger, who is probably the best overall player in the league in this whole playthrough. But both sides, Milwaukee, they lost a guy a couple seasons ago who turned out to be the MVP the year after they lost him, and they keep rolling. They keep winning. But Tampa Bay has lost Justin Bellinger finally. He signed with another team in the offseason. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that up. That's just been an unprecedented run, I think, in this playthrough. I don't know if I've had a playthrough in all the versions I've had where you see that kind of dominance, but it's kind of cool to see. But I would like to see some new teams start winning, mainly the Phillies. But like a couple years ago, Oakland and Miami, I thought that was a good series. Maybe I thought it might be kind of a changing of the guard type year, but nope. Come back next year and it's the same two teams in it. But this year, I think it's going to be different, and I'll show you one reason why I think it's going to be different. I like using this off-season center a lot for when I'm going through free agency, and then when I start the year off, I like to kind of take a look at it and see how the competition did in the off-season. And if you look at the off-season summary by team, Kansas City had a really good off-season. They picked up 9, almost 10 wins above replacement on their roster. But at the bottom end, Oakland, all the way at the bottom, negative 8.7, tied with the Dodgers. And then Miami, they lost 7.4 wins above replacement. So it could be good news for us in the East, although the Nationals and Braves had a good offseason. They're pretty high in the positive side. The Mets, they were on the positive side. And for us, we are below the median here. We lost 1.9 in wins above replacement. And really how we did it is in that pitching. We lost Farr, Shrimsher, Ollis, Coreyline, but Coreyline was still available going into the spring training, and I've got an offer out for him. It's just a 1-year offer, but if I can get him again as my closer, I'd be really happy with that. I'm not sure why he didn't sign in the offseason, but I really, more than anything, I think it was probably due to his demand was pretty high, and he wants to be a starter, although his expectations now showing closer. He was listed, I think, as a starter a couple times when I checked the free agency, and he doesn't have enough overall pitches, I think, to make him into a starter. He's borderline starter, but I'd rather put him in the bullpen, where he was up and down last year. At one time, I thought, man, this guy's going to have a really good year, might compete for that reliever of the year, which didn't happen. But he blew some close games in extra innings, and you can see 18 losses over 2 years coming out of the pen. So I would really like to see a better performance there, but I might give him a shot at closer if it comes down to it, if I can re-sign him. And in terms of the guys I picked up, after I lost out on those pitchers, and I went for like 2 or 3, and it just kept, the bids and the demands from them just kept escalating. So I just gave up, which is what happens a lot of times. And I picked up a couple of guys. Rosier, I picked him up in the Rule 5 draft. He's primarily, I think, going to be used out of the bullpen, but it gives me another a good, I think, option in the pen if he turns out to meet his rating expectations. And then I got this guy in free agency, Andy Lockhead, I guess you could say. He's a borderline starter, but I think he's got a little bit better potential as a starter than Coriolan. His fastball and splitter are pretty good, and his curveball's got some room to grow if he can develop it. But at 32, that's probably not going to happen. But I only gave $1.5 million for him. I'm going to try him in the rotation starting out in spring training. He's 3-star overall for my scout and OSA. So we'll see if he can turn out. He has started in this league. You can see with Arizona, he started 27 games, 25 games the next year for the Yankees. If he doesn't turn out okay as a starter, I could move him to the pen, and we'll see what other kind of shakeup I can make to that staff. But the way it's going right now, I'm going with a 6-man rotation, which is what I like to do in spring training. Another guy I picked up is Diego Medina. I signed him to a minor league free agent contract, so if he makes the roster, he'll get a major league deal. And I like his ratings overall, and he's a lefty, so I would probably primarily use him as a lefty specialist. That gives me 2, I believe, out of the pen, and I think that would be pretty good to have. Although he has had some decent years as a starter in his career, like 2025 with the Mets and 2026 with Boston. Those years weren't too bad. Over 200 strikeouts one year. So he could probably be pushed into starting duty if I needed a starter, if injuries started taking over. So I'm going to be depending on a pretty mediocre staff once again. I've got 4 guys who are rated at 3 stars overall. And then I've got Urrutia and Gowdy, who's taken a big slump. I don't know what I'm going to do with Gowdy, to be honest. If he doesn't perform that well in preseason, I may just release him and eat that contract. There's no option left on it. It's going to be the full value, but I just can't see him. His movement rating is going really way down at 8. I don't see him being a starter anymore. And if I moved him to the bullpen, if I just changed his position, he doesn't even pick up really any ratings change just doing that. So I think he's probably going to be a tough decision for me as we go into the regular season. And then for the lineup, it's going to be pretty similar to what it was last year, although I did pick up Carson Kelly, a righty. He's a veteran. He's 36, almost 37 years old, but great defensive position ratings. His arm 16, catcher ability 18, and he's seen as a leader in the clubhouse, and he's really popular, and that might help, with team chemistry and whatnot. So he wants to be in the starting lineup. I'm going to platoon him against lefties for now, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to stick with Vandenhoeven at first. Barge, who's now a 3.5-star rating. I'm hoping he can bounce back from that year he had last year. The production was good, but his average took a big dip, and I'm hoping he gets back on track. Lewis, Elman, Vargas is still looking strong, and Ochoa, I'm probably going to be doing some platooning with him as well. He's still rated okay against righties, but he's not really good enough to bat full-time against lefties. So I've got a couple of options there, Neidiger and Molina. And this rookie that I'm going to try, he was a former first-round pick, a pretty high pick for me at 14th. I'm going to try him in spring training, and then unless he plays well enough to stick, I'm probably going to send him back to AAA so he can get some more play time in. But I'm hoping that he's got a future, if nothing else, at least on the bench. So that's going to round it out. Oh, and also, even though Devers is, I've got him for another couple of years if he meets these options, the vesting options. But I want to give Tennessee some play time. He's listed as a 3-star overall from my scout. OSA doesn't like him as well, but he's kind of got some numbers like Vandenhoeven. He's got good power. He's got a good defensive rating at third base, and overall in the infield, he looks pretty good. So if he can start developing and start hitting at just 24 years old, he may have a future, if nothing else, as a bench player, but maybe as a starter if he develops a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go ahead and send through this first week and check the news first, though. It looks like I got a... Oh, this is just on that Coreyline offer that I made. And right now I've got Bobby Austin closing, and I think he's potentially going to be my closer. He's 5-star potential. But I might use him as setup if Coreyline comes back on the team. So we're going to start it out here. I don't know if we're going to play too many games. I've already got a personal measure. Another pitcher, nice 3-star. There were some good relievers. I saw this on a post over at the community forums for Out of the Park developments. Relievers are still hanging out there. I noticed that a lot when you get to preseason and spring training. A lot of years I won't even sign a reliever until late in the offseason because some of those guys stick around. I think for whatever reason, relievers are a little bit easier to come by in this game. Looks like Machado finally signed. He signed with the Yankees. I was beginning to wonder. He's very much injury prone, but his ratings are still solid, lefty and righty, although he's a little bit better against lefties. And he is so close to 3,000 hits. So I'd like to see him get that if he can. And another signing there for Houston. And Shrimshire, he signed with the Twins. So they're going to give him a chance. $3.4 million contract, but he's going to be listed as fragile. I don't know if they're going to get a whole lot of life out of him. And we got Juan Elman out. Recovery's going to take a week. Let me see if I've got him. Yeah, he's playing. Let's see if he can soldier through it. He is definitely injury prone. It's been kind of a hold your breath kind of situation for him. I kept expecting him to have a big injury last year. 3.5-star potential pitcher. He's got some good ratings. He is for Miami. I'd really rather not trade within the division, and plus I don't like his personality ratings. That might hurt the chemistry. See, this is another. Dave Cochran is another guy out there. He's a 5-star closer. I probably should have made an offer for him, actually. But, oh, yeah, that's right. I wouldn't make him an offer because I didn't like his personality. He often shows a lack of effort. That kind of scared me off a little bit. Oh, no. So the first big injury of the spring is going to be to Barge, who needed some time, I think. So I'm going to place him on the disabled list, and then I'm going to have to rework my lineup. With him out, that's going to be Arenthal then. He doesn't have a whole lot of speed, but I'll keep him at that third spot for now. And then I'm going to put Mark Martin and gosh, I'm not going to have much option there at short. I'll probably just have to go with Tennessee there at short and see if he can spell Lewis every once in a while. And then I'm going to put I want to put this McCartan there against lefties, and then against righties it'll be Arenthal, and then McCartan, say like every fifth game. He's a guy who's never really taken off too much. And then lefties, there we go. It'd be nice to see if he could maybe have a good turnaround. I think at one point, I don't know if he was a high draft pick. Yeah, it was a second round draft pick for me, and he's got some good contact and I ratings, avoiding K. He's got good personality ratings, and honestly, 2029 was a good year for him in AAA. It's just with Vargas and a few other guys that I had in the minors at second, he just never really had a chance to step up and hold down a full-time job. So Jordan Groshans, Kansas City, looks like they may have given him a contract extension. Not a $13.7 million. I don't like his contact rating. His batting average, you can see he's a good defender, but his batting average 229 career. It's a little bit of a gamble to me. So through the first week of spring training, we are 3-1, not too bad. Another trade offer here. This one from the White Sox. Good looking pitcher. He's an extremely hard worker. I just don't think I'm gonna have anything to trade for this guy. So I'm just gonna walk away from it. I left him out there. I forgot about that. So we're playing pretty good in spring training, although I think it was a couple years ago when we finished first in with the best record overall in spring training, and it didn't really translate. This guy's got some really good ratings. Extremely hard worker. I wonder. Let me see about this one. All I'm going to do is just see. No, this is what I've typically noticed. I don't have a player that would work. So we'll just have to move on from that. So we're 5-4 now, slipped a little bit. All right, so it looks like we have stumbled a lot. We're now 5-6. Okay, so Chicago White Sox, they offer Pat Tracy, who's listed as a starter, but his stamina is really poor. So he would more than likely be a bullpen guy. And they're wanting Morel, who is a 4.5-star setup guy. Didn't have a great year. I've got him signed for a couple more years. I'm going to give him a chance because I do like his ratings, and I like having him in the setup role. So I'm gonna reject that one. So we're now 5-6. We're last in the East. Looks like Arizona and Miami are having good springs. The Braves having a good one, and then Cleveland, Toronto, New York, and the American League, they're looking good. Let me see how we're looking in pitching for the spring. Starters, Lockfeld's been rocked. Loghead, he's been rocked. Medina, 8.10 ERA. Arudio's looked good. I think that he might have a really good shot and holding on to his fifth starter spot from last year, but we'll see how that goes on. And Kentelme has really picked it up. He's a lefty. I like having a lefty starter. I hope he can keep it developing. He's 3 stars overall, and he just had a tough 2029 2 years ago, and then last year he was out with injuries the whole year. But I'm hoping that he can develop. I think his overall, except for his control, he's got 3 strong pitches. His stuff and movement ratings are high, so I've got some hope for him. And then in the bullpen, Bobby Austin has looked awesome. Ben Wright, who I think is probably going to stick based on his ratings. He hasn't been as high as, until I called him up late last year. He hadn't been higher than AA, but he's got a good upside. Kane's looking good. Morel's looking good. And then on the lineup side, Smith not doing all that great. Vandenhoeven struggling. And Arenthal, who's not going to be starting when Barge gets back. Devers is looking good. Cameron, Tennessee is looking really good. Lewis having a great spring, 393 batting average. Elman is now healthy again. Vargas struggling, and Ochoa really struggling. So we're going to keep playing it out and see where we land. So we're back to 500. And Atlanta and Miami, they're having great springs. Look at that, 11-3, 12-3. Looks like I got an injury to Vandenhoeven. Addison Russell still hanging in there. He's injured though, day to day. Kansas City looks like they may have lost their closer. Career over. Oh my gosh, that'll hurt him. And this guy was 4.5 potential 5-star closer. Had a great year last year. So they may wish they hadn't gotten rid of Kidd, who was their primary closer for a while. And Ignacio Tovar is out. Good pitcher in the past for San Diego, and he's struggling. Now he's gone for the year. So where do we look in spring training now? We are 8-8, but Atlanta and Miami, boy, they're having great springs. 13-3 for the Braves. Toronto's 13-3 in the American League. Milwaukee and Dodgers are stinking it up, 4-12, and also the Twins 4-12. And Sean Barge is now eligible to come off. That didn't take too long, seemed like. So now I gotta, and this is how I do it. I don't know why, but and then put the card in there, and then against righties, I really hope he can come back this year. Whoops, wrong deal. I need him to be back to the form he was at a few years ago, a couple years ago. His power and production is still there, but I'm not sure why his average took such a dip last year. And he really struggled, of course, against lefties, which I kind of expected that, but I didn't expect it to the level that he slipped. So let's see, Vandenhoeven, minimal for a week. Looks like my scouts improved his ratings on him. He's now 3 overall with 3.5 potential. Looks like we may have a losing preseason here, spring training. Corey Taylor's a good, pretty good veteran reliever that I thought about signing as another setup guy. Looks like he's signed with Tampa Bay. Jacob Barnes, another reliever out there. He's a 2.5 star. He signed with the Reds. And Boston, Sean Gibson. Yeah, I mean, I would like to have this kind of a starter, but again, I don't think I'm going to be able to offer them anything from my team that's going to satisfy him. Big injury for is that KC? Another big injury. He's gone for 4 months, but it didn't look like he's a starter. Mejia, another closer who was out there, he signs with the Dodgers for just $4.9 million. Maybe I should have gone for one of these guys. Jeff Trejo, they're trying to. And Patrick Weigel's out for Atlanta for the year. I'm surprised I haven't heard back from Coriolan. I would think he would have signed by now. And let's see. No, he has not been able to. I don't know if it's a budget issue, but I'm not getting any luck with international scouting. I mean, it's rare that he finds a guy above 1 or 2 star potential. So we're about to get to the end of the spring here. We're 9-14, so it's not going to be a good spring, but that's okay. How many games we got? So opening day is a little over a week away. Let me get through these next 3 games. We win against Cincinnati 3-2. Lose 3-4 to Chicago. 0-3 to Arizona. Man, we're not doing good. Another season ender. He's not that great. 1-star player. His career's over. So we got 2 more games left at Washington and Miami to close out spring training. We lose 2-5 to Washington and 1-5 to Miami. So, and we've got Devers, who's going to be injured. He's day-to-day for about 3 days. That's good. He's been pretty healthy since I've had him. So, spring coverage, we did not have a great spring training. We had, thankfully, the Dodgers were worse, or we would have had the worst record in the National League. But the rest of that division was well above 500. So if it turns out to be this competitive, we're going to struggle. I'm going to have a hard time getting back in the playoffs. San Francisco looked good in the West. The Reds looked okay in that Central. It looked like they were kind of jumbled up there. And then in the American League, the Yankees had a great spring. Tampa Bay, pretty decent spring too. But the rest of the league, look at that. A lot of, almost that whole division in the West was around 500. No team in the Central or the West had a winning record. That's kind of crazy. 4 teams in the East had a winning record. So it's kind of a mirrored thing going on there in the East, in the American League and the National League. Looking at our individual performances, though, so spring training, pitching staff can tell me did look good, so I think that's gonna win him a spot. Gowdy did not look great, didn't look terrible, but he didn't look great. Lockfeld, I definitely wish he was a better pitcher. Loghead turned it around. He 4.12 ERA. Medina looked pretty good then too. He turned it around. Urrutia was good, and then Vallejo was okay. So I'm going to have to think on this, but I may be willing to part with Gowdy, even though I'm going to lose so much money. It's not even funny. I'm going to be stuck with that contract anyway, and I just don't know if I need to put him in the rotation right now. And I don't know if I'm going to have room for him in the bullpen. A couple guys look bad. Stewart, I don't expect to stay up. Kane had a great spring training, 6.66 ERA. And Rozier had, he didn't look good either. I'll stick him in there, though, for a little while. based on his ratings. Depends on, though, if I've got room. Berger, who had a good spring training, did not look that great at times last year. I'm not sure if he's going to develop. I mean, 2 years ago, I think he was pretty good in his rookie year. But he's only got 2 pitches, and only one of them is really, truly a good pitch. So I don't know if that's going to be enough to rely on. My scout seems to think he's an average reliever. So I usually go with 12 men on my staff, 5 in the starting rotation, 7 in the bullpen. I've got a lot of whittling down to do here. It looks like one, two. So I've got to move 5 guys off the staff. So that's something I'll have to work on offline. And then for the lineup, Kanan Smith, he's really struggling right now. His ratings aren't that terrible overall against righties, and it's primarily what he should be getting at bats against. But a poor spring for him. Kelly looked okay, looked better, and then Vandenhoeven, 206 batting average. But if he keeps that rating, though, I think he can develop into a better player. Barge, 194. He didn't have a good spring. Devers had a really good spring, 338 batting average. And then Cameron Tennessee looked really good. And he's now a 2.5 with a potential 3.5 star rating. He can play several positions, although he's not rated too high at anything other than third. I don't know if I really want to keep him up. I'd rather he get everyday play in the AAA, but he might be a call-up for this year. And then Lewis had a good spring. Elman suffered quite a bit. Vargas had a good spring, and Ochoa really stunk it up. So in the outfield, I'm probably going to go with Molina, who had a good spring, and Neidiger getting some platoon time with Ochoa and right. And then I've got to decide. I think I'm going to keep Arenthal up. He's got really some good contact ratings and can play several positions in the infield. And then that'll be the big choice. Then will be really, do I keep Tennessee up as a bench player, or do I go with Riley, who's going to be backing up first base? And he was pretty good last year in primarily pinch hitting duties, some DH. So I'd rather keep him up. So I'll probably go with, more than likely, except for Kelly, who I picked up in the offseason, I think the lineup is going to be really close to the way it was last year. But if Tennessee develops, Devers might be, he might be potential trade for some pitching help. Even as good as he's been, Yeah, I mean, right away. Some pretty hefty contracts, but Danny Martin, who can start if I need to. But Matt Manning, a pretty hefty contract, but he's dependable. He's had several years of 30-plus starts. I just don't like that contract. 3-star Andy Nowlin. Another Connor Olio. He's got some pretty good ratings there, but he's just a 3-star pitcher. So there's a few 2.5, 3-star starting pitchers out there that I could get right now for Devers. I'll see how that plays out, though, as the year gets going, and if Tennessee develops. Trevor Rogers, who's had a good year last year, 3.5-star pitcher, he would be my number one at the moment. He really is. He's a mid-rotation starter, but he's had some good years. You can see that year for Atlanta. I think he may have been Cy Young that year in 2025. Not too terrible considering that the contract is only 2 years. It's pretty high price on it, but if we're playing well enough to be competitive, I might consider a trade like that. If it's going to mean that's the kind of piece that we would need to get into the playoffs, I could see trading Devers away for that. But we'll just have to see how the season starts looking and how Tennessee develops. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish out the spring training, get my lineup set for regular season, and then we'll get going in the next episode and probably play through the start of the season. But as always, thanks for subscribing and excuse me, losing my voice. Thanks for subscribing and watching the episodes and the likes and comments I'm getting. I'm going to be out of town after tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be able to get one more episode in before I leave. I'll be out for a week or so. And then I've been playing with some ideas of starting another playthrough or two, and kind of winding down the Phillies after maybe this year, or we'll see how that goes. But I'm curious about starting. I definitely want to get a playthrough going using the current rosters and teams, and I'm also toying with the idea. I don't do it too often, but I'm toying with the idea of doing a historical playthrough where it wouldn't be a true historical replay, but I would start out with a historical team and then go through the draft and kind of develop my own players and my own farm system. But I've been looking at that, and I think I found a team that might fit what I'm looking for, and that's something I'll talk about, though, in a future episode. But thanks for watching this one, and I look forward to seeing you the next time, which hopefully will be within a day or two, and we'll get the season started, see if we can repeat and make the playoffs again. Thanks for watching.